Thank you very much, Ms. Histuk, Representative Hurd. It's now my honor to introduce our next featured speaker, Andrew Hallman, Deputy Director of Security Intelligence Agency for Digital Innovation, and he will be speaking to us about accelerating the speed and value of intelligence. Mr. Hallman.
Well, first, thanks to the Cloudera team for having me here this morning. And I'll start by saying that I'm going to wrap myself in a contradiction. Heading this digital directorate, I'm actually going to be not using visuals. The reality is, with the pace of business, just haven't had time to put something together. The irony is, as my people who work for me know and work with me know, I'm all visual, so this is out of character. But I'm delighted to be here today to join all of you, this august group of speakers, practitioners, all devoted to the practices of a truly data-enabled government. And the recognition that data can, will, should play a central role in the practice and products of intelligence is really at the founding heart of what we're doing with the Digital Innovation Directorate at CIA. This is the first new directorate in over half a century. As such, I've been asked to offer some perspective on how the work that you and we collectively are engaged in will accelerate the speed and value of intelligence, and with the ultimate outcome of improving our outcomes for national security and protection of our nation, whole of government and whole of nation approaches. First, let me tell you a little bit more about this directorate that we have now at the CIA. So, last March, I was asked by the Director of Central Intelligence Agency, Don Brennan, to lead this directorate to basically integrate the digital centers of excellence in the agency, our cyber experts, our informational technology staff, our data scientists, our open source experts, other related functions, but integrate them in a way that we could then drive digital capabilities deeper in a mission to get to those areas, as Congressman Hurd talked about, in actually enabling the conduct of intelligence, making it more agile, and improving those outcomes. So, at the same time, we're also cultivating a professional development model that not only deepens and broadens the expertise of our workforce, our digital workforce, but raises the digital acumen of our entire workforce. So I like to think of the new directorate here that I lead as having the responsibility for caring, nurturing, and feeding the digital bloodstream on which all of our missions rely. So we're first establishing a better transition from legacy architecture to a cloud environment, transitioning data sets, and then establishing an end-to-end data management framework to get more value out of our data across the agency. But I think it's important first to offer some context about the threat landscape and the evolution of that threat landscape. The growing range, complexity, and frequency of the threats that we face as a nation. It's not only the complexity of these threats and their number that's generated in the growing volume and variety of data that we're having to deal with, but it is within that data that we have the opportunity to better understand these threats and then lay the intelligence foundation for sound policymaking to address them. And indeed, we face an increasingly complex and volatile global strategic environment. As you all know well, new technologies are increasing connectivity, the speed and volume of information, the pace of change, all challenging traditional 20th century social, political, and economic constructs within states and between them. While we continue to face discrete threats from long-term adversaries, power has become more diffuse in the international environment. All of those challenging traditional approaches to intelligence, which I'll talk about. At the same time, we face a growing complexity of the information environment. Some of it representative of this diffusion of power globally. Our information environment today is often characterized in terms of the rapidly growing V's of data, data volume, variety, and velocity. These trends alone affect our work in the intelligence community just as they do in yours, probably with many of the same complex and disruptive consequences. Together with the growing interconnectedness made possible by today's technology, however, they have a net effect that is important to intelligence as any individual vector. They lead to accelerating information diffusion and fragmentation. Now, historically, the democratization of data and information has tended to result in devolution of authority and diffusion of power, with potentially destabilizing effects on institutions, business models, and nation states. Going back to the 17th century, authorities rued the profusion of books that followed the growth of the printing press, noting, and I'm borrowing from a particularly priceless quote from Richard Atkins in 1664, that they filled the kingdom with so many books and the brains of these people with so many contrarian opinions that these paper pellets became as dangerous as bullets. The 20th century ushered in network communications, which supported the mobilization of movements by enabling information to be exchanged across social and geographic boundaries while contravening official information blockades. And of course, in the 21st century, digital technology has provided both the revolutionary stage and content for mass mobilizations from the Ukrainian Orange Revolution to the Arab Spring to the rise of ISIL. The developments that have already taken place in our short century serve only to underscore our need to understand a wide cross-section of actors, their human geography, beyond our traditional focus on leaders, regimes, and elites of our adversaries. And as we all know, data just doesn't diffuse in today's digital environment without a contrail. It leaves behind digital exhaust. Small fragmented clues of muscle movements. That exhaust presents both opportunities and challenges. An opportunity comes from the possibilities of proxies and correlations in place of attacking a problem directly, so the whole can be pieced together or even inferred from those fragments. Doing so, however, requires sensing new and sometimes tenuous interrelationships that now outweigh or have replaced old ones. For as much as the world is increasingly interconnected, the simultaneous fragmentation has made decoupling of long-standing linkages possible. So I think about how multi-billion-dollar businesses have grown out of a sharing economy, itself made possible when the rental of durable goods has been decoupled from actually owning these goods, be they cars or hotel rooms. So I wonder, too, about the analogous disruptive implications for the socio-political stage. There's also the challenge I suspect we all share with the separating wheat from chaff. With growing data volume, variety, and velocity, and diffusion, the signal-to-noise ratio declines precipitously. So let me talk about the implications for intelligence. The growing complexity stemming from this information explosion, diffusion, fragmentation is driving requirements for new approaches to the conduct of intelligence. Our established business model for intelligence is built around shaping collection strategies to find answers to specific questions and reveal secrets denied to aspire adversaries. That will always be an enduring feature of the intelligence business. But this operating construct is inherently limiting. Cognitively, information discovery is bound by the limitation of our assumptions, imagination, the creativity of the questions that we ask in determining the intelligence need, and our own situational awareness. Temporally, the old task, collect, analyze, and produce cycles can't withstand the accelerating rate of information. Nor can it keep pace with our policymakers' needs for rapidly assimilating intelligence into their decision-making cycle, which is increasingly short. In short, we're operating in an increasingly competitive information environment in which we face an imperative to accelerate the speed and value of intelligence. Fortunately, our organizational efforts on this front began even before I stood up this new directorate. As our former Chief Information Officer, Doug Wolf, noted last year at this forum, one critical step toward this goal was our transition to the cloud environment, which, as you know, offers significantly more scalability and agility than our legacy architectures. So as we continue to make progress in commoditizing the bottom half of the stack, we have begun to address next steps. I want to share in more detail with you today what three of those major initiatives are. The first is optimizing the underlying digital ecosystem. The second, establishing sound data management principles. And three, making data useful to an increasingly sophisticated consumer. First, one of our major steps toward accelerating the speed and value of intelligence is optimizing this underlying ecosystem. While our balkanized IT architecture can work today, it's usually with too many heroics, too many people, too much time, and too much money. Just as getting software to work in a cloud environment requires a broad set of components to work together, so too does successfully conducting intelligence activities in today's competitive information marketplace. It's requiring our new organizational components in the agency to work together in different ways than it has in the past. So the most obvious advantage of optimizing this underlying ecosystem is achieving efficiency. This can happen through scale, particularly by limiting the redundancies in the bottom half of the stack that occurs when everyone rolls their own. or by automation, reducing the manual touch labor associated with many of our legacy architectures and workflows. But an emphasis that the cloud-native and digital innovation movements share, in particular, is that of creating repeatable processes by mapping out the relationships between components and then choreographing them in a way to be seamlessly interoperable. In the cloud-native world, this is what makes microservices so valuable. In our greater organizational sense, it is also the approach we're implementing with regard to a decentralized governance process, with just enough high-level guidance to operationalize at the local level with some consistency. And it what makes fundamental shifts as all of our IT is agency IT and all of our data is agency data realizable. A second advantage to optimizing the underlying ecosystem, and a central one to both cloud-native approach and to digital innovation, is enabling continuous innovation. For once you've taken care of the bottom half of the stack, you allow mission users to focus on the top where they can apply their creativity, be dynamically responsive, and anticipate instead of react. In practice, continuous innovation looks first and foremost like the modular approach of microservices. That modularity enables the organization to take advantage of the inherent creativity that occurs at the local level, yet assimilate and scale the innovations throughout a system prepared to receive them. As a consequence, the entire ecosystem naturally leverages innovation more seamlessly and at a faster rate. Modularity also allows the market forces to determine which components of that ecosystem survive, which are adopted, and which go by the wayside, providing a degree of resiliency and renewability that is often missing from more monolithic approaches. We're also taking a more user-centered approach, wherein we design solutions around user needs and a seamless user experience instead of applying our own internal business logic. Another aspect we know is key to continuous innovation in cloud-native systems, and that we're exploring in the agency, is the use of paired programming to improve software design quality. And it's worth calling out that we fully recognize that experimentalism is essential to continuous or virtuous cycles of innovation, as I call them. Just as successfully implementing microservices and other cloud-native aspects requires greater tolerance of failure of any single component, so too does our own digital innovation movement. Briefly, I wanted to call out one additional advantage to optimizing the underlying ecosystem, and that's improved security and compliance. At CIE, we're doing a better job of partnering with our security and compliance stakeholders, engaging them at the early stages of the solution set, instead of a sequential, temporally defined end of the development cycle approach, which has been so in the past. In doing so, we're building trust that all of us are security-minded and accountable, and in the end, making higher quality decisions about technology adoption and assimilation. Over the longer term, we're trying to provide proof of that mindset and make our partners' jobs easier through documentation and building analytics that will shift us from being reactionary to being proactive with regard to compliance requirements and security threats. So a second major initiative that will be essential to accelerating the speed and value of intelligence, and as I believe directly relevant to this audience, is the establishment of good data management principles. We believe the first principle is getting the right data to the right people. It's that basic. This can mean baselining the existing data. Who has access? How's the data being used? This is not, as I'm sure you all know, a trivial undertaking from a cataloging perspective, especially with the variety of data that we have. It also presents a formidable talent management challenge in that it requires developing data librarian and information science skills that are relatively rare in any population, but also must be effective within the compartmentalization construct of the intelligence world. It also means jailbreaking data out of silos and applications where they're held captive, while also enhancing its security. The popular analogy for this is moving from a castle and moat security mindset to an object and role-based security approach. A second principle we believe is important is exercising data management at the speed of mission. The foundational practice for doing this is establishing an inclusive corporate data governance strategy. It minimizes impediments to appropriate data use while efficiently resolving any disputes that arise. Ideally, this strategy should also establish a set of policies and standards that amount collectively to one set of rules for each data set. Riding on this backbone is a set of efficient data management practices that span the entire life cycle of data. At the front end, we're striving to ease data acquisition while minimizing data duplication. In the middle, we seek to process data at the speed of collection and to build in sophisticated analytics that maximize the data's value to the user. At the back end, we must resourcefully orchestrate the effective archiving and retirement of data. A final principle I'll offer, one that is particularly vital to my own directorate, is that of creating a culture of data excellence. Such a culture I define as one that, one, clarifies and professionalizes data-related roles and responsibilities. Information is the currency of the realm in the intelligence world, and everyone who has a dollar in their pocket feels ownership. While this is great with regard to inculcating a security mindset, it can make the path to responsible data usage a belabored process. Clarifying roles and responsibilities is thus part of a culture of data excellence because it enhances both the speed of mission and true accountability. Once clarified, these responsibilities must be reinforced by rewarding appropriate security, data sharing, and discovery behaviors. And last but certainly not least, a culture of data excellence continually advances the data literacy of the entire workforce. Raising the digital acumen across our organization requires, among other things, rewarding curiosity, strengthening knowledge, sharing practices, and perpetually refreshing our intelligence officers' skill sets. It's made possible only by rebalancing the calculus of risk and removing fears associated with new technology, thus empowering the workforce to smartly explore the saliency of new developments to their own missions. Part 3, making data useful to a sophisticated consumer. A last significant undertaking to accelerate the speed and value of intelligence is on the delivery end and how we provide support, how we make our intelligence product more useful to an increasingly sophisticated consumer. So I define intelligence value in our increasingly complex and competitive information environment in terms of a few key characteristics. First, intelligence of value is rapidly curated. It stands to reason that the explosion of data does not necessarily improve decision-making, nor is it helpful to the intelligence consumer to merely describe what the threat is. We've got to make this a simplifying of the complex while offering data-driven insights as a foundation on which to make sound decision-making, sound policy-making. Second, intelligence of value contextualizes developments and patterns, including by adding in the perspective gained from secrets, and provides a clear understanding of the implication for U.S. national interests. This presents new requirements for cross-domain solutions, unclassified, classified, at speed through streaming analytics. Third, intelligence of value increasingly needs to be anticipatory. Anyone who knows me knows that I hold very strong convictions about how the intelligence community needs to become more anticipatory. For today's purposes, I'll summarize anticipatory intelligence as having 3 factors. First, it senses emergent trends and enables us to discover the unknown unknowns. Second, it detects subtle shifts and discontinuities that may portend future disruptive events and/or present opportunities for policy. Third, it moves us from a reactive response to a proactive shaping stance by providing a data-driven foundation for our policymakers to develop policy approaches that actually affect outcomes instead of being reactionary. We have tremendous opportunity here to apply what we know from the social sciences, such as by drawing from historical correlates of social, economic, political instability, and with advances of modeling complex systems, leveraging the rapidly growing sensory environment of today's world to instrument the emerging patterns of future international political, social, and economic behavior. Given the complexity and speed of such events, we have a significant data challenge. The sensory signals from such multidisciplinary behaviors, commodity markets, food security, political conditions, competition for scarce natural resources, societal mood, just to name a few, are a few data sets with high volume, variety, and velocity. Understanding their interaction at speed requires advanced analytics, learning models, advanced computational power, and sophisticated visualization. And I think, as all of you shared, this is a wonderful challenge to have. Fourth, intelligence of value is timely. We must acknowledge that we are indeed competing with consumers' expectations as well as other sources of information. This means we have to move into the realm of rapid advances in streaming updates to the most important and critical matters while delivering the full range of intelligence products and support to a busy and short decision-making cycle consumer. Fifth, intelligence of value is compelling. It requires developing more varied and exquisite means of conveying information, especially those that assist the cognitive process. such as multidimensional data visualizations that express complex relationships. For the intelligence officer, this presents a new frontier for analytic tradecraft. Intelligence analysts have been used to expressing confidence in particular collection approaches, the reliability of a human asset, the reliability and confidence we have in a technical collection. Whether a human asset or technical collection, we now face the challenge of articulating to consumers how to have confidence in insight generated by the application of advanced analytics to a growing variety and volume of data. Data sets that in isolation often have little meaning, but through correlation can have significant meaning. Expressing that in a way that a consumer has confidence in it is a new element of our tradecraft, one that is challenging. Okay, looking at the future, I'll leave you with a couple of questions that we're still pondering. First, how do we best rewire what I'll call our organizational neural pathways and build internal connectivity that enables us to optimize the collective intelligence of our workforce? In an increasingly specialized world, new organizational constructs and practices are necessary to draw out and mobilize our officers' unique knowledge, skills, and abilities, as well as to foster systematic learning and rapid adaptation. Given the complexity of the national security challenges that we face, we must optimize not only our digital architectures and data management, but the application of our intelligence officers' talents and minds to the national security challenges that we have, and do this in a more agile way than we do now. To this end, we have to enable rapid dynamic teaming, digitally networked and transcending physical, geographic, or organizational boundaries to storm these vexing problems. The digital realm provides us with both the space, a virtualized work environment, and means for those connections. And I'd consider this the shared intelligence economy. Second, how do we think of intelligence content of the future? Our traditional intelligence cycle and methods enable us to hone practices that promoted the consistency, accuracy, and clarity of what we called finished intelligence, typically well-curated, well-reasoned, heavily text-based intelligence product that goes to policymakers. These will have enduring value, particularly in very weighty policy decisions where you need a heavily considered, reviewed, coordinated approach to that intelligence analysis. But those practices in this, what I'll call long-form content, does not necessarily compete well in the information environment that I described. Moreover, the expectations and thresholds themselves are changing in a world of 140 character updates, short-form content, if you will, and a continuous information cycle available via mobile devices. So we're not here to chase the news, but we have to apply our intelligence more agilely than we do now and deliver content more agilely. The President's Daily Brief, for example, is increasingly feature more dynamic visual content. It's helped convey complex national security developments and relationships in a manner that gives greater fidelity to the President and his national security team. We now deliver the PDB in tablet form, paralleling content delivery outside of government and providing a means of animating what historically has been mostly print content. Along the lines of my reference earlier to the rewiring of our organizational neural pathways, Vint Cerf and Larry Mader, in a Studies in Intelligence article, observed that IT devices are verging on being tethered minds that provide continuous analytic support to consumers. This opens up new possibilities for the future, including the ability for the user to interact more intimately with the intelligence producer. This will shorten the intelligence cycle from intelligence collection to delivery of content. This requires a cultural change for an IC that's accustomed to a predictable once or twice daily delivery of intelligence. It has its roots, though, in ensuring the intelligence analysis on which the President and his team make decisions are well-founded, they're well-substantiated. But we have to look at a different kind of model for the future where we have a more dynamic delivery of content for the President and his team. So let me end by thanking all of you for your participation here to share strategies and best practices for dealing with our common challenges, again, in the whole of government, whole of nation approach to addressing our national security and opening up our apertures to the art of the possible. Thank you.